the Trump campaign, and Donald Trump was very open in the campaign about his intentions to punish students on college campuses who had been protesting the Biden administration's support for Israel, who had been protesting the Israeli destruction of Gaza. And as is true for most of Trump's campaign promises, he is now making good on that. His administration is making good on that. His administration is filled with loyalists of Israel. Of course, one of his biggest donors was the Israeli-American donor, Miriam Adelson, who gave $100 million, and by Trump's own admission, said that in return for those donations that she and her now deceased husband, Sheldon Adelson, had been making to the Republican Party, they would constantly come and ask for things and demand things from the U.S. government in order to serve the interest of Israel, and they would often get it as a result of their status of big donors. So all of this has a very broad, clear, and long-standing context out of which these censorship controversies are now emerging. But I don't think I really expected something quite as severe and as much of a deviation from the American tradition to happen so early in the Trump administration as is now happening with the attempt to deport the Columbia grad student Mahmoud Khalil, who is married to an American citizen. His American wife is 8 months pregnant. They're about to have a baby. Typically, American citizens have the right to marry foreign nationals, and when they do marry foreign nationals, they have the right to bring those foreign nationals to live with them in the United States. They get green cards, and they ultimately are on the path to citizenship. Donald Trump twice did that with two different foreign women whom he married, one of whom is now the First Lady, Melania Trump, and she was able to get citizenship based on that. And there was never, ever this notion that green card holders in the United States are somehow barred from expressing controversial political views or criticizing the policies of the U.S. government or engaging in political activism or political protest. And that's what makes the decision to target Mahmoud Khalil, as opposed to any of the other Columbia students who are only in the United States on a student visa, maybe for a couple of years. It would have been, I think, less controversial. That's what makes the decision to target him in particular extra chilling. The fact that someone who's a green card holder, who's supposed to have the status of a permanent resident in the United States, I'm not suggesting that green card holders can never lose their status. They can, and they have on rare occasions if they commit violent crimes. But having green card holders, especially ones married to American citizens, lose the right to stay in the United States and get arrested by immigration authorities and put into deportation as a result of their political views or their political activism is something that is extremely rare in American political history. And yet that's what the Trump administration is doing in its second month in office, obviously as a means of shielding Israel from criticism and protest. And even if you're somebody who somehow thinks that this is justified, there's no question that it raises serious constitutional questions. Because nobody honest can possibly deny that there's a very strong political component to all of this, that there's a very strong motivation that is based in the viewpoints that are expressed by Mohammed Khalil that led to his activism. If he had been protesting in favor of Israel, if he had been protesting in support of Donald Trump, if he had been protesting against the governments of Iran or Russia or China, there wouldn't be any conservatives who would be demanding his deportation or justifying his deportation. A major component of this controversy, and I would argue by far the most significant, is not that he was engaged in political activism and protest, but specifically was protesting U.S. support for Israel's war in Gaza and the Israeli war in Gaza itself. And anytime the state takes action against somebody inside the United States as retribution for or in response to their political views, that necessarily raises serious First Amendment questions. And that's exactly what a federal judge earlier today essentially acknowledged. He didn't rule in Khalil's favor, but he had previously imposed an injunction against his deportation pending a hearing on the constitutional and other legal issues And today he set a hearing for that and also ordered the lawyers for Khalil to have access to be able to speak with him, because thus far that access to speak with him has been severely restricted. Here from CBS News, there you see the title, former Columbia University student Mahmoud Khalil to remain detained in Louisiana for now. Quote, Judge Jesse Furman said he would grant a request by Khalil's lawyers allowing them to have privileged phone calls with Khalil at least twice, today and tomorrow. Khalil was arrested by federal immigration authorities Saturday night at his university-owned apartment. Lawyers said in court Wednesday he was first brought to a detention center in New Jersey before being flown to another site in Louisiana. Khalil's attorney said they have been unable to have privileged communications with him since they said the detention facility holding Khalil wouldn't allow that type of call until March 20th. The federal judge on Monday temporarily halted Mahmoud Khalil's removal from the United States, barring the government from deporting him before Wednesday's hearing. Furman did not rule Wednesday on an effort by Khalil's lawyers to have him move closer to his New York home. In the meantime, Khalil will remain in detention in Louisiana. Now, a couple things to note about this. Khalil is living in the New York area. He is a grad student at Columbia. There are plenty of detention facilities in that area. Why did ICE take him and bring him to Louisiana, a state he has no association with, not even sure he's ever visited there? The reason is because oftentimes what the government will do is try and purposely take you to a place where they know the judges are more likely to rule in favor of the government and against the person they're trying to punish. And they think Louisiana is a much more hospitable legal environment for them to try and deport a Palestinian critic of Israel than, say, New York. So they're not content to just allow the legal system to take its course. They're purposely trying to put him in a place where they can get a favorable judge. Now, the other aspect of this is that the judge that they actually have, Judge Furman, is a little bit difficult for Israel supporters to try and demonize, because Judge Furman is not only Jewish, he's a practicing Orthodox religious Jew. Now, that hasn't stopped a lot of conservatives from trying to demonize him. The minute he issued this order temporarily barring the U.S. government from deporting Khalil so that he could at least have the opportunity to have his claims heard. This is very common for courts to do if if something's going to happen that prevents you from having your legal rights determined once he's deported. It means that it's very, very difficult for him to get back to the United States. The only real opportunity he has to raise the constitutional issues he intends to raise is if he's still physically present in the United States. So the court simply said, pending a hearing, you cannot remove him from the United States. That caused a lot of Israel supporters to attack Judge Furman, notwithstanding the fact that he himself is a practicing religious Jew. Now, this case, I think, has provoked so much media attention, so much controversy, precisely because it's such a blunt attack on the right of speech and the right of protest. And the Trump administration has made explicitly clear that this is by no means the only such case they intend to bring. They intend to bring a lot of these cases and deport a lot of people, not who have committed violent crimes, not who have been charged with any criminality. Mahmoud Khalil was never charged with a crime. He still has never been charged with a crime. He's not accused of assaulting anybody or using violence or doing anything else other than, as Marco Rubio put it, expressing views that the United States government considers somehow dangerous to the foreign policy of the United States. And there are a lot of people on college campuses now who have expressed opposition to the Israeli war in Gaza and or to the Biden administration's financing and arming of that war, who are extremely worried, extremely scared about what this means for them. And I think it's one of the really important things to note about censorship, which is that oftentimes the purpose of the state acting against a particular individual with a particular view is not so much to get rid of that particular person. Mahmoud Khalil is not instrumental in the protest movement against the Israeli war. That's not why they've chosen him. They need a test case in order to create a climate of fear. That's often what the government wants with censorship, is it wants anybody in the future who thinks about criticizing Israel, questioning U.S. support for Israel, and most of all, protesting against Israeli violence to be too scared to actually do it, to really think, wow, if they can do this to Mahmoud Khalil, who has a green card and is married to an American citizen, what would that mean if I, somebody here on a student visa or a work visa, or even if I'm a U.S. citizen, what does it mean for me if I also do that? The Trump administration has vowed not just to deport foreigners who are on a student visa or on other visas if they participate in these protests against Israel. They've also said that people who have done so in a way that they consider criminal will be imprisoned. And so this climate of fear is very much part of the goal here, as it often is with censorship, as it usually is with censorship. And we have heard from people at Columbia, people we've spoken with before, people we know, we've interviewed off the record or otherwise, who have made very clear that they have real fears about what their past activism means and believe that they aren't able to engage in the kind of expression and protests that typically the United States has promised people. It's one of the reasons people come to the United States is because they believe they have the political liberty to speak their mind, to denounce the things they find objectionable. And that's what this is all about, is polls showing declining support for Israel in the United States, and therefore an attempt to attack what they regard as the causes of that declining support, namely free speech, social media platforms like TikTok, and especially college campuses, which have traditionally, for many decades, been the venue for all sorts of protests, at least as disruptive as the protests against the Israeli war in Gaza, and often more so. Protests against the Vietnam War, the locus was college campuses. Protests against the apartheid regime in South Africa that helped bring down the regime, the locus for that were American campuses. There's a long tradition. That's because people who are young in their early 20s and their mid 20s are typically more aggressive in their political activism. They get very wrapped up in these political causes. And so this kind of protest movements on American college campuses is part of, you can even say an iconic part of the history of American academic institutions. But because this particular protest is directed at one of the most sacred issues in American public life, which is the foreign country of Israel, you're seeing a response from the state that is really quite extreme. Now, I'm not saying there haven't been extreme responses to other kind of protests. There was the notorious incident at Kent State where protesters against the Vietnam War were actually killed. 4 of them were shot and killed by government agents. We've had a lot of attempts to crack down on protest in the United States, but the tradition of protesting on American college campuses is a very long and I think noble one, and that is very much part of what is being attacked. And that's the reason why there's been so much outpouring of anger about what's being done to Khalil and support for him and his constitutional rights as well. A very large number of people gathered outside the courthouse where that hearing was held, and his lawyer ended up addressing the crowd, and this is part of what he had to say.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. As we tried to make clear in court today, what happened to Mahmoud Khalil is nothing short of extraordinary and shocking and outrageous. It should outrage anybody who believes that speech should be free in the United States of America. Mr. Khalil is a lawful permanent resident who is coming home with his U.S. citizen wife, who is 8 months pregnant, and he was taken by U.S. government agents in retaliation, essentially for exercising his First Amendment rights, for speaking up in defense of Palestinians in Gaza and beyond, for being critical of the U.S. government and of the Israeli government. Those are the reasons why he was targeted. Those are the reasons why he was detained. And that's the reason why the government also moved him to Louisiana in further retaliation for the fact that on the night of his arrest at home, he filed a habeas corpus petition in this court, which he also had a constitutional right to do. In retaliation for that, he was moved to Louisiana to take him away from his lawyers, to take him away from accessing this court, to take him away from his family and his support network. And so every day that Mahmoud spends in detention in Louisiana is a day too long. we and he fully intend to vindicate not just his First Amendment rights, but those of all Americans, frankly, and all lawful permanent residents, and anybody who wants to speak out. It simply cannot be the case that you can be disappeared at night off the streets of New York City simply because the current U.S. government, the current...
I'm not sure why that cut out there in the middle of the sentence, but he's essentially making that argument that historically, constitutionally, and under very well-established jurisprudence of the Supreme Court, not just American citizens, but people here legally in the country have every right to express their political views, to criticize the U.S. government, to engage in political activism and protest. And one of the points I've tried to make previously for people who keep denying this, who keep saying, oh, the Constitution only protects U.S. citizens, despite this 200-year history of Supreme Court jurisprudence that says otherwise, is that all you have to do is imagine what the United States would be like if it were really true that only U.S. citizens have constitutional rights on U.S. soil and nobody else does, even if they're here in the United States legally. And one example that I've used is that Jordan Peterson, a very popular commentator among American conservatives, is often in the United States. I believe he lives in the United States, or if he doesn't, he's in the United States all the time. He's not an American citizen. He's a citizen of Canada, meaning he's a foreigner every bit as much as Mahmoud Khalil, although I don't even know if Jordan Peterson has a green card. I don't know his legal status, but I do know he's a foreigner, and Jordan Peterson frequently participates in political actions, speaks at political protests, denounces the policies and actions and statements of the U.S. government. So imagine if the Biden administration, when Joe Biden was president, had said, we're very tired of this foreigner, Jordan Peterson, coming to our country and criticizing our country and our government. If he doesn't like our country, he should leave, and we've arrested him and we're going to deport him as a result of his constant criticisms of our administration. Would anybody have difficulty understanding the constitutional problems there? I think nobody would. Did you know that scammers can literally steal your home right out from under you? The FBI calls it house stealing, and it's a growing real estate scam targeting American homeowners. Here's how it works. Criminals forge your signature on one document, use a fake notary stamp, pay a small fee, and file it with your local recorder's office, and just like that, your home title has been transferred out of your name. They then can take out loans using your equity as collateral or even sell the property behind your back. And you won't even know it's happening until you start getting collection or foreclosure notices. So let me ask you, when was the last time you checked your home title? If you're like me, the answer is never. And that's exactly what these scammers count on. That's why I trust Home Title Lock. Their $1 million triple lock protection keeps your home and equity safe. Here's what you get: immediate 24/7 monitoring of your property, urgent alerts if there are any changes, and if fraud should happen, the U.S.-based restoration team will spend up to $1 million to fix the fraud and restore your title at no additional cost. And here's the best part. I've teamed up with Home Title Lock to give you a free title history report so you can find out if you're already a victim and access to your personal title expert, a $250 value just for signing up. Go to HomeTitleLock.com and use my promo code GG250, or click on the link in the description. That's HomeTitleLock.com, promo code GG250 to get the protection and peace of mind that you deserve. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.